So when I got that failing grade, is all I could think of is I failed this class, and I'm gonna figure it out. I know that, but at this moment, I don't know how I'm gonna figure it out. I just worked this whole semester thinking that I'm doing the best I can, and I didn't do the best I can. That's that thought process, So there's a lot of uncertainty.
This is the Elevation Room, a space where we unpack life's hardest moments and the impact that they have on our faith, family, and fulfillment. I'm your host, Dustin Lale, and each episode we share real stories of resilience and breakthrough to inspire you to keep moving forward, rooted in your purpose, living on purpose, and walking with purpose. This journey we call life is not meant to be done alone. So click subscribe or the follow button now, settle in, and join us as we go into the Elevation Room. Well, welcome back to the Elevation Room. Today I have John Romero with me, who I will introduce in just a moment. But I'm so glad you're here. This will be episode number 2 for the Elevation Room. And so you sit before me today as a husband, a father, pharmacist, entrepreneur. I'd love to know a little bit about where you are so that our audience knows where you're at in life today. And then, of course, go into who you were before the man sitting in front of you.
He's like I said, John Romero. So currently, it's probably about a 2-year time track or 2-year decision or whatever, actual making headway. But so I've been full-time pharmacist since 2012.
Okay.
But I just knew there's something in my heart that I said, I'm not either not being fulfilled or I'm not following the correct path. I still don't know what that is. But about 2 years ago or something like that, I told my boss at the pharmacy that I was managing, I told him, I said, look, I'm not getting fulfilled. The structure that I'm living with at the pharmacy it doesn't feel correct to me. I need to step back. I need to be part-time. I need to pursue the real estate. I need to pursue something different than what I'm doing now. And it's still so weird to me because I look back at it and I say, why or how, we'll talk about that more. But so high level for now is I'm part-time pharmacist. I try to grow as much food as we can for my family, but also at the same time trying to learn how to grow more food for more people, and we'll talk about that more, I'm sure. I'm just trying to develop businesses that can work around my lifestyle, but still allow me to be present as a father and husband, because that's the biggest thing that, again, we'll probably talk about that later, but just being different than how everybody else does it. Because I look at the rat race, if you want to call it that, and I say, something's not right here. That either my lifestyle or my mindset doesn't work with that lifestyle, or they're not living the correct lifestyle. And I firmly believe that, not to say anything bad about people, but I firmly believe that the way that people live their lives nowadays is not how God intended us to do it. And I still don't think that's fulfilling his journey for our lives. So high level, I'm part-time pharmacist, trying to grow as much food as I can. I'm into some real estate investing. I'm doing some real estate loans, like lending out money to people who are doing real estate investing. I'm currently developing a business that I'm calling Raging Stripes and Washing, where I do pressure washing, house washing, but mostly focused around painting parking lot lines. I think that's a good niche in the service business world, because that's like the biggest thing right now is service businesses. So I'm developing that, but I'm also, just over the past couple weeks, something hit me that is T-shirt designs, real weird. But just selling those online on print demand websites and stuff. So I started nitpicking and just kind of figuring out how that process works. Ashley's probably like, this dude's the craziest person in the world. But I'm telling you, I get these crazy ideas with my weird sarcastic mind, and I'm like, wait, this could be a good idea, So I'm like jotting down those ideas.
Matt and I have that same issue. Matt, who was on the podcast last episode, our wives share a very similar sentiment to Ashley of, what are you coming up with now?
But see, that's the thing too. And again, we could talk about this more, but at first she always accepted my idea. Like, she always knew that I was onto something, but I could tell there was a big pushback, not necessarily like, don't do it, but there was like, this, what do you mean? What are you trying to do? Like she
Yeah.
understood what my goal was, but she didn't understand the path to get to that goal. And there's a lot of things that have changed in her that I've seen, especially over the past year. And I don't know if it was me being part-time that's led her like, okay, maybe he really can make this happen. But I can tell there's a big difference where she's like, wait, I see something here. And she's starting to do some things too that are like, well, that could really help us too. Like just outside of what she does on a normal basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to talk about that because that sounds very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, I'd love to know, maybe a story or two from before you were who you are today, and maybe something that impacted you along the way that really put some of those desires or mindsets inside of you.
Yeah. So probably the biggest thing and I guess you call it the most recent is during pharmacy school. That first semester is like that's the craziest thing because you're at undergrad at UL Lafayette is, it's hard. Don't get me wrong, but you can still mess up and still get by easily. Like at undergrad, in my opinion, the way my mind worked, the way the way I implemented my work ethic, how I did everything. But when you get to a professional school, things are just different, unless you have, and there's classmates, unless you just have that mind that just automatically absorbs, automatically understands things. I don't have that. It takes me for scientific or like book work, stuff like that. It takes me a lot longer to learn things. So my first semester, you get put into this pharmacy school, professional school with to get a doctorate degree. And you work very hard all semester, just grinding, and then at the end, it's like, man, you worked hard, but then finally this last test, you didn't make the grade that you needed to. So I get the grade like the day or two after you take the final, and you fail it. I think it was like a D, like a 50 or a 60 or something like that. So it wasn't like this big surprise because like the whole semester you're trying, and I didn't know how to do better. I guess I didn't know the resources to use them. I learned that a little bit later. And actually thinking about it now, there's another class that same first semester that was a really tough class. It was called pharmacokinetics. That's not the class I failed, but the professor was Dr. DeGennaro.
Okay.
And I had there's 5 tests or whatever. The first 3 tests easy because it's more math. Like for me, math is easy. I made A's and B's on the test. I get to like the 3rd or 4th test, whatever number it was, I make like a 40% on the test. Yeah. Because
drastic difference.
Big difference. And the reason is because his testing was you had to get the first question right to get the second question right. And if you miss one question, you're not going to get the rest of the test correct. So I don't know why I didn't do this for the class I failed, but somebody told me, or I knew that, I don't know what it was, but they go to his office every day, come up with a question, doesn't matter what it is, in his face every single day. And it came down to the final where I had to make like 110% to pass his class. And I'm telling you, I applied myself like I never applied it before. And I felt like I knew the material backwards, forwards, all the way around. But again, I was just plugging away, just studying, just going to his office every day, presenting new questions, just making sure I knew the material. Well, sure enough, I needed a 110% and I passed. And he gave me whatever I needed to pass. Wow. So that's the weirdest part of that semester is that I passed his class needing a higher grade than the class I failed, but I still failed that other class. Not connecting the two, the hard work together, the two is weird, But so essentially I failed that class. Pharmacy school at that time, ULM, was in a transition of a curriculum. So my year was the last year that they would have that particular curriculum. Then the next class would have been a new curriculum. So basically my class had no choice if you failed, otherwise you had to restart all the way with the next class coming in the whole another year. So some way or another, again, I guess we can call it God's intervention maybe, he allowed the people who failed that year to just remediate over the break of in between semesters. So luckily I was able to remediate that class and continue my normal track with my normal class.
But in that moment, had you always wanted to be a pharmacist? I mean, how'd you get to be pharmacy driven?
Man.
Because I want to understand when you got that failing grade, What was that emotionally, mentally?
Yeah.
What was that?
Definitely tears, but so I'm the first person in my family, probably most likely the extended family, to have a doctorate degree. So it was always told to me, get an education. My mom ended up getting her bachelor's in special education, I think, in 2009, which is the same time I was in pharmacy school.
Okay.
So she was she's going to fuss at me, probably in her 50s, I think, when she got her teaching certificate from UL Lafayette. So it was always told to me to get an education, doctor, lawyer, And so I was like, oh, yeah, growing up through school, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be a doctor. Yeah, I'm going to have these cars, I have all this. And I quickly realized, like, wait, again, the entrepreneur mindset, I don't want to go to school for 10 years or however long it takes. I think it's more like 12 or something to be a doctor, to make all this money, but to work all the time. You don't have any free time. So somehow or another, pharmacist came to mind, still in the medical field. I thought that would be interesting. I thought I could help people. I think pretty much, 98% of people who go into pharmacy think they're going to help people. Yep. And personally, I don't think that's the truth. And we can talk about that more. But yeah, so just get an education, doctor, lawyer, whatever it is. I came up with pharmacist. I don't know how. Just makes it good, makes 6 figures every year. You're set for life, basically. So yeah, that's kind of like this, just a sentiment, or at least how I got to that point of wanting to be a pharmacist,
So that's how you got there. And then what was going through your mind when you realized you had failed?
Yeah. Man, see, my faith, so again, I'm sure we can talk about that more, but my faith at that point was very lackluster. Like, my mom brought me to church every single day that she could, but I didn't really know. I didn't know much about the Bible. I didn't really understand much other than the high level little things. It was, my mom had tried her best to bring it into the home, but my dad wasn't as present as he should have been. So my faith was very, very small. I just knew that God was what we should believe in. The Bible is the truth, but I didn't really understand anything other than that. I'm a non-denominational Christian, if you want to call it that. That's all I really could at that time believe or really know. So when I got that failing grade, again, there was no thought of, God, why did you do this? Or why did I do this? None of those thoughts ever crossed my mind. All I could think of is I failed this class, and I'm going to figure it out. I know that, but at this moment, I don't know how I'm going to figure it out. I just worked this whole semester thinking that I'm doing the best I can, and I didn't do the best I can. That's that thought process, So there's a lot of uncertainty, you know what I mean? And there was some people. I wasn't the only one to fail that particular semester. I think I was the only one to fail that class, which was crazy. But there's other people who failed other classes, like the De Janeiro class I was talking about. There was a significant number of people who failed that class.
Gotcha.
I think our class was like around 100. And I want to say there must have been 10 or 15 people who failed De Janeiro's class. And I was the one other person. I think there's me and one other girl who might have failed the class that I failed that first semester. So, yeah.
Yep. So from that moment, you realize, okay, failed, but I'm going to figure it out one way or the other.
Yeah.
We'll get through this, and the remediation happens. Thank God.
Yep.
You continue forward on this path, even though it sounds like you had a mindset of, hey, this might not be what I do the rest of my life, but it's something I need to do now anyway.
Yep. Yeah, there was, and it's in thinking about this, there was some people who in the class who either failed out or failed one class and quickly realized maybe this just isn't what I want to do. But I didn't have that. I never had that thought. I don't think I ever thought at one point that I didn't want to do pharmacy. But I knew in my mind that something wasn't right about my decision. I did know that. I did have that feeling that's just like, I just don't know if this is right. I just don't know. But all I ever knew is just to push forward, just that mindset of work ethic. Just do what you're supposed to do. You're in that path. Just do it,
Yeah.
But I have no idea what pushed me forward, even to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Some would probably say Holy Spirit. Others would say grit, perseverance, and, maybe how you were raised. And because I've heard you say a number of times, I just got to push forward. Got to get through this. I'll figure it out. Can you look back, or have you identified anywhere in your childhood where that was kind of instilled in you in one way or another?
So we were definitely a lower middle class family. Like, we had what we needed, not what we wanted. I remember Christmases would be like, we'd get like $100 a gift, you know, and that was a push. Now I could tell, like, even as a young child, I was the youngest of three. Even as a young child, I could tell that was a big stressor for my parents, and it definitely was. You know, my dad was a mechanic at Hub City Ford, with like probably making, nowadays would probably be like $15 an hour at the most, with three kids and a wife, you know. My mom would stay at home for a while until she started, she'd like substitute teach and stuff, you know, until she got her teaching degree. But even with teaching degree, that's not much money.
Right.
So I think that's just ours. You know, hard working is all we really had. We didn't have education to just rely on a consistent paycheck that if you have a degree, if you don't mess up as far as like a malpractice or kill somebody or something, like, as long as you do what you're supposed to in the medical world, and you know, it's kind of hard not to have a job, especially nowadays. I mean, you have to really mess up to not have a job in the medical field. Right. You know what I mean? So I think it's just that grit from the generations previous of just hardworking people who didn't have the luxuries that I would probably say I have now. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so there was a couple of things that come to my mind when I think about that. Is at some point, like one summer, my mom would bring me to the recycling places. So I would go, or in the summers, I would just ride my bike around all of our area and pick up cans. And I even had people who would save cans for me, and I would go pick them up from their house. And then my mom would bring me to the recycling place.
Built your little can route, huh?
Yep. No, for sure. I had customers, if you want to call it that way.
I love it.
So like, that's my earliest days of me just figuring out how to make money, even though I didn't know, you know, I didn't really realize what I was doing. But $100 a week for a kid with nothing is pretty significant. I mean, even nowadays it's pretty significant.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, whatever, I don't know if it was $100 a week, I don't know, but it was like 40 cents a pound or something. So I'd go with a couple of pounds, whatever my mom could fit in the car or whatever. So yeah, so it's just, that's all I can really think of when you ask that question, is just making a way. You know what I mean? Like, no matter what you think, no matter, it could be better or could be worse, it's just doing it anyways. Yeah, you know?
Absolutely.
And I like I said, my dad being a mechanic, that's not an easy job, you know, especially when you're not making enough money to even to provide for the family the way you feel like you probably should. That takes a lot of grit.
Oh, for sure. My father-in-law is a engine mechanic, you know, has been for my wife's entire life. And he's one of the hardest working people I know. So I get that for sure, that work ethic being on display. Yeah. And even though, you know, in your words, your father may not have been the most present, you still saw that behavior on that side.
He still provided the best he could. Right. You know what I mean? He did better than his parent. He did better than what his dad did for him. That's right. That's the key.
That's right. And I know you had shared with me off camera that, you know, where you are today with your family, that was something, looking at your dad, you say, hey, can take what I can from him, but also some of the things that were lacking that I want to change for my kids as well. So I'd love to hear when Ashley became a part of your life and how y'all met and that journey, if it came before your faith journey or at the same time like it did. You know, my faith journey really started when I met my wife, Bethany. So I'd love to hear when she came about.
Yeah, so graduating pharmacy school was definitely a big leap for me, because you come out of school, you take a couple months to be able to take the test. It's called an APLEX, to actually become licensed, if you want to call it that. So a couple of months in between that, you're kind of just trying to figure out where you're going. You know, I work for CVS as they call it a pharmacy intern, until I actually passed the test and take it. So up until like once I graduated, I just went, some reason brought me back to what my mom always did, just always go to church. So luckily, I just, every Sunday that I was off of work, I would go to church with my mom, go to Crossroads Church every Sunday. Again, not still just at the service, but not really in the book outside of service. Just being a good person, but going to church, you know, and just constantly just growing in that. But still coming out of pharmacy school, I was still partying, still living that, you know, that young life, you know, being as safe as I could about it, obviously, because I'm a pharmacist now, but So in that lifestyle, that just going out on the weekends and going to different social events and just trying to be a person of the community, but the way our Cajun culture is, unfortunately, like that person of the community. Just trying to meet people and become friends with people. So there's Downtown Alive here at Lafayette, Louisiana, in downtown. They would have it like every Friday in the spring and the fall. So me and my buddy Kyle, we would go pretty much every Downtown Alive we could, and whoever friends would come meet us, they'd come meet us.
Yeah, it's a big to do.
Yeah, it's really fun. Like I said, no matter who you are, and if you drink or don't drink and all that, you can really have a good time. It's family friendly. The food, whatever you choose. So one particular Friday night, just decided it was a night that I was going to ask everybody to dance. I don't know, just one of those nights. Just I'm going to try something different than what I've been doing, meeting women. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't working up until then. So I who knows how many women I asked to dance that night. She's probably the only one that actually danced with me, if I correctly remember that. We just swapped phone numbers after that, and honestly, I think alcohol had a lot to do with it as well, because there was a point where I probably didn't really remember who she was. Also, we laugh about it now because we don't drink anymore, really. But so it just built from there, luckily, and so again, I was just a go-to-churcher, if you want to call it that. But now with her especially, it's become more of a let me dig into the Word more, because she's been a person of every morning pretty much, like all I've ever known her. Even no matter how tired she is, she still tries to wake up before me and Estella and I, and do her Bible readings or whatever she's choosing of the day, or her prayers. So she's definitely been the one that's helped me grow in the faith, other than just be a Sunday church goer.
Right.
But not only her being with me, but also just my outgoingness has changed, if that's a word. My ability to talk to people and sit with people like this, like dude, years ago, this is impossible for me.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being able to conversate with people has changed significantly, and that's also helped my confidence and make me feel like I can do different things than I would have never thought possible, like go to small groups or start a small group, or just those little things.
Yeah. What drove that change?
Man, so again, the only thing I can trace it back to is God's plan for me as a pharmacist, and I guess that sometimes it has some awakening moments. I'm like, wait, maybe that's why he put me as a pharmacist, because I have to talk to people.
Right.
I'm forced to talk to people. I'm forced to lead my employees or my coworkers whenever I was their manager, or even when I'm working on a day-to-day basis, because I am no matter if I'm the boss or not, when I'm there and I'm the only pharmacist, I am the boss. I have to make sure the decisions are made correctly. So I think that's like, just without even thinking about it, my mindset has changed in having to talk to people and interacting with people. I never had trouble like being polite to people or talking to. I never had trouble with customer service. Never had trouble with that, but just that outgoing, whatever, that social bone is infused in me now as a result of having to talk to people on a daily basis at the pharmacy. So that's probably the biggest factor in how I've got to this point.
I would say I think it's so cool when we're looking back, different moments of reflection in our life and things that we think, man, pharmacy, yes, I'm on this path, but it's not really, whether it's in my heart, my mind, it's not really what I feel like I want to do long term. But then, 10 years later, 15 years later, sometimes sooner, sometimes longer, sometimes never at all. But those moments when we can look back and kind of see this thread of, maybe that's what God was doing in that season or in that moment or in this job or in this role or whatever the case may be, where a lot of times when we're in the thick of it, we have no idea. And sometimes it's frustrating. Other times it's exhilarating. And yet God's working through it all. And just knitting together this life, this journey that we call life, which I think is really an awesome thing. And so I know you and Ashley have been married, 7 or 8 years now?
Yeah, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what and how has y'all relationship grown as you've grown as a person, obviously in your faith walk, as a husband, as a father, in your drive and passion from, hey, I'm a pharmacist and now I really feel like I want to lean into this food thing.
Yeah.
I'd love to understand that journey with y'all and then unpack where the drive for the food has come.
So relationship wise, so when we first met, Ashley was in a transition at LSU where she had already graduated and she was working at a cardiology clinic with the intention that she wanted to get into med school.
Okay, wow.
But I think she had applied but wasn't accepted. So she had made a pivot, like if you want to call it pivot, to physician's assistant.
Okay.
Again, same with me. Now that I think about it, it's weird because I thought the doctor would be a great track. Now, our reasons for not becoming doctors are different, but she also had to pivot because become a doctor wasn't realistic for her situation. So she went to PA school. So we met, I think it was around September of 2013 or something like that. Or anyway, somewhere around that range, okay. 2013, 2014. And that was about the time that she was about to enter into PA school, which is be a 2-year track. So we started dating roughly like a month or 2 months before she started physician's assistant school. So we started dating basically long distance almost. She was living in Baton Rouge at the school, and I'm back at home living with parents, being a pharmacist. And so luckily, I think we made it through that time because I knew what professional school was about. I understood the limitations, understood the boundaries, understood be there when she was able, but don't be there otherwise. Just
right.
Just
don't have to. Oh, why aren't you able to meet me? At this
I need
time?
attention. No, that's not how it works. Yep. Like it's all about her right now. Mm-hmm. So I think starting our relationship off on that step has been the biggest lifesaver. Because with all marriages, you're gonna have problems. You're gonna have tough times, and like right now, we're in a really good phase. But there was a time a couple years ago where we just could not connect correctly. And it's because, like I said, it was all because of me, because of my mindset. And like, I know I'm on a different track than where I need to be with her, obviously. Mm-hmm. But how do we come together on it? And that was a big pushback.
Yeah. Well, let's unpack that. Cause I know you mentioned it earlier, and I'd love to sit in that for a minute, because a lot of times talking with entrepreneurs, people who are either looking to start businesses, have side hustles, people who have that drive and ambition, oftentimes share that there is a struggle, one, with where they are in themselves and being content in the season that they're in, what I call the season. And then sometimes even with their spouse, if they're not on the same page or aren't understanding, or it hasn't been communicated correctly, or maybe just not seeing eye to eye. And those seasons are very difficult. Mm-hmm. One, because anytime you're at odds with your spouse, that's not a good thing. Yeah. And then when you're someone who has such drive, having that support at home is very, very important. Yeah. Think back to Proverbs 31, and this Proverbs 31 woman, it says her husband was respected at the gates, but she also was doing a lot in the background. So it's really a symbiotic relationship. And so I'd love to understand and hear what you're willing to share in that season.
That's definitely how it came to a head, if you want to say it that way, is because I've thought I was fulfilling my responsibilities by trying to do all this extra work, all these different types of businesses, trying to be an entrepreneur the best I can. But I wasn't doing the small things at home that I used to do. As I wasn't doing them as frequently because I wasn't home as much. I wasn't there. I didn't have the off days like I used to, because I'd work we kind of both work shift work where we at least get a couple of days off per week.
Gotcha.
And those couple of days off per week is where we catch up on all the housework, all the little minute details that need to make the house run, or otherwise things just blow up, So it came to a point where I wasn't doing those little small responsibilities, but I thought that I was still, even though I had slacked off on some of those, I'd picked up other responsibilities that I thought were more important, but she didn't see it that way. And that's how we came to a disagreement, a pretty significant disagreement, but we had to figure out how do we get back to the center where we used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that answers your question. But yeah, so we had a good little hash out that particular night. And I told her some feelings that I had that the devil was putting on my heart. I told her, I said, look, I feel like I'm pushing very hard to get us to a point where we don't have to rely on the 9 to 5, or we can have a lifestyle of wake up, whatever we need to, get done what we need to, make sure the kids are taken care of. You know, that dream lifestyle. I thought I was pushing to that, but she didn't see it that way. And I definitely agree with her that I was not fulfilling my responsibilities. But I told her, I said, the devil's put on my heart that we're not going to make this happen, you know? And that night we hashed it out. We that grew us back together, where we glued us, where we realized, okay, this is what John needs to do differently. This is what Ashley needs to do differently. And ever since that point, I feel like we're constantly growing in that little nuanced things, like just with the dishes, you know. I mean, I try to do them every day, but it's just not how I was raised to be the cleanest person around. But she is definitely the cleaner person, and that's where it pushes back. Like, that's those little minute details that you, in a marriage, you have to find a way to meet in the middle. You know, she doesn't know this, and she'll know it now. But I'll put the dishes in the dishwasher a certain way because I think that's the perfect way. But she will pretty much all the time go behind me and change them a different way.
Yeah,
you know, and that's the different. You know, like I said, she doesn't get mad at me for that. But if you're not at least doing the dishes, then she'll never be able to fix them the way she wants them. That makes her happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Have y'all ever gone through or read the 5 love languages?
She has.
Okay.
I started.
Okay. Did she try and like get you to read them or?
No, I don't think so. I think I go between cycles where I try to read books, but I fall asleep.
Gotcha.
You know?
Yep.
So there's a time frame where now I've leaned on podcasts because that's the best way I can learn. But I try to read books, and at one point I was trying to read that book, and I told her about it. She's like, "Oh, I think you really need to read that." Like, you know,
this sounds like me. Yeah. I read it, and I told Bethany, I said, "Hey, babe, I really think you should read this." She was like, "Just give me the highlights."
Yeah. That's what ended up happening. You know? Yeah. So, but in that conversation, we kind of discussed. Or at least she told me, like, look, this is my love language, you know, some touch and feel, but more acts of service or whatever.
Yep.
And you see, the thing is, as men, we know, I think that's our problem, is I think most of the time we know what they need or what they want us to do, but for us to actually get to that point is the problem, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you. For us, it was, for Bethany, her love language, receiving was acts of service. Mm-hmm. And to your point, when I read the book, of course, I'm like, oh yeah, this makes sense for me and how I feel these ways. But then when I got into acts of service, I was like, oh yeah, I already really kind of know this about Bethany, but it gave me language to it to put and have that conversation with her. And to your point, that is not how I was raised at all. No. Man, that is still something I have to work towards, and I don't always do a good job of it, but you are exactly right that I knew it. And then when I had language to it, I was like, oh, I know this, but I don't want to do it. Yeah. And then, you know, for her, in a lot of ways, the reverse, mine's physical touch is my primary, and then words of affirmation. And for her, it's not easy. You know, it just doesn't come natural for words of affirmation for her. And so it's funny how God just put, for her and us together, where we can grow together and in areas that we're not really strong in. Yep. That's what our spouse needs us. But I see, you know, God using that as an opportunity to grow us. Like I said, not always easy for sure, because, man, if she would say, man, if you could help out around the house, and I'm thinking just like you, man, I've got a day job, I've got real estate investments, I got these side hustles. Yep. I'm doing all of this for the family. That's the famous words, right? I'm doing this for the family. I'm doing this for the family. You don't appreciate me. Like, you don't see what I'm doing. All the things that are just, like you said, darts, arrows from the enemy, just trying to sow division. But when I read that book, of course, even though I knew it, it just helped me understand. It almost like saturated a little bit, where I was like, yes, Lord, I hear you. yes, I need to continue to work on this, and then helped me not get so offended as easily in those moments where it's like, well, no, that's just how she feels loved. And if I'm not doing those things, then as a husband, I am not loving her well.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. And I still, and I think that's a struggle for me now more than ever, is because sometimes I feel like maybe I'm not doing what I'm supposed to, even though she may be content or not telling me anything. I struggle with it. Like, okay, am I doing enough? You know what I mean? Outside of take the at home stuff I'm saying, you know? Yeah, it's a constant battle, you know.
Oh, for sure.
And that goes into a lot what we were discussing before, and weeks and whatever how long we've been talking for as a friendship. But it goes into all the different ways of how do we get the businesses, or how do we get the kingdom that we're looking for, but still keep the kingdom at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, like deciding how to do a podcast, or how to do the next business, or how to do the real estate investments, but finding a way to do it where you're doing your commitments at home. That's the hardest part, man.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's something which we were talking a little bit off camera about is for me, I've been just seeking God, hey, help me with this discontentment. And it's not unhappiness. And I know you understand that piece. It's I love where we are, the season of life we're in. Of course, it has its challenges and its moments, but really, really cherish my marriage, cherish, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 19-month-old, this season of life. And at the same time, in my heart of hearts, feel like, hey, I am also called to so much more on the business side of things. And going back to, okay, God, not short of ideas. I'm not short of ideas, as
Too many.
I'm sure you are not short of ideas.
Too many.
And so it's, okay, Lord, I need to keep the first things first. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added. Because to your point, we can pluck an idea out of thin air. Like, poop, poop, poop. Yep, let's go do this. Let's go do this. But realizing that, God gave Eve to Adam, hey, first ministry. Then, yes, go work the ground. So there's a balance there that, we sometimes call it work-life balance, but what I've been trying to focus on is, hey, this journey we're on is just ministry everywhere. It's not siloed per se, but doing life together, which is one of the things I love about entrepreneurship, is we can bring the wife along, bring the kids along that journey as part of it, and not have to keep it separate. Because that's something when we were talking with the kids, doing a little test podcast, hey, what does daddy do for work? Oh, well, you work on a computer and phone calls. Like, I mean, you're not wrong. I do, but it's selling insurance or, being an employee benefits consultant is a little less tangible for them to understand. And so that's the journey that, as husbands, as fathers, that we're on. And, it's beautiful, but presents its challenges for sure, you know?
Yeah. It's funny, like speaking, like going back a little bit more on the ideas, like that Trump is trying to do tariffs, and one of the tariffs, or he might have enacted it, but is metal. I was like, or aluminum, all those, like, oh man, I go back to picking cans. Price is gonna go up.
That's right.
But yeah, into like Stella's been coming with me on the past couple Saturdays at the Farm-acy.
And she's 4, right?
And she's 4. Yeah. And I knew she can handle it, but you can kind of see when she's in the Farm-acy, she's kind of looking like, oh, okay, I don't know what he's doing, but okay, man, Farm-acy, now I know what Daddy's doing a little bit more at the Farm-acy, because we tell her I work at the Farm-acy, that's one of the things you tell her. It's like, same thing with you, like working on a computer. Well, now maybe she can see a little bit more what that actually means.
Right.
Another thing too, I was thinking about, Ashley and I tell her this all the time, or we talk about this, is we used to go to the gym to work out, and I still try to. Doesn't happen that much anymore because of the way I'm trying to design the life. But I saw something recently that I never really thought about it this way, but it goes into your point of the kids not realizing what you do. Is we used to go to the gym to work out and maybe put the kid in the nursery, or the kid stays at home with a babysitter. But now we work out at home. We work out at home a lot, or we go for walks, or I'll go on a bike ride with Stella on the trailer. Like, just that being with us or seeing us working out, I think that makes a difference. Other than they realize, well, that's just going to the gym, but they don't know what the gym means.
Yeah,
Now
that's
they
so
see
good.
me actually doing some physical, hard something that they like. Okay, that's what I can try and do.
Yeah, and they
instead of
can
just going to
start
the gym.
mirroring that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you're getting the time with them too,
Exactly.
which is great.
Yeah.
Now, where did your passion for the food come from? Because I think I have an idea, being that you were a pharmacist, but I don't know. We've never talked about this, so I'd love to hear that side of things, because growing food and that journey is heavily involved with the family and getting them involved, I imagine. So,
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack as far as Ashley goes with the food journey as well. But first, getting started into why, again, sometimes it connects. So I think that, again, this is another reason why God put me as a pharmacist. He put me in pharmacy to realize how broken the system is.
yeah.
And not to make anybody feel less of themselves, or if they're on certain medications to make them feel like they're not living their godly life. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is I see it every day, and people aren't getting better. It's not changing. You rely on these medications, or even there's even more medications now for weight loss stuff. You're relying on a lot of things that God may have designed, but I don't think they're being used correctly. Like, for instance, if you have diabetes, okay, now there's obviously a lot of instances, a lot of people who, no matter what they do diet, they can't control the diabetes. I understand that. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is the lifestyle that most people live nowadays is not conducive to a healthy lifestyle. No way. You can't tell me that you agree the fast food, all the processed food. You can't tell me that that's right. That's correct. So again, God put me in the pharmacy. I'm fairly sure to realize that in a different way than most people would. So in pharmacy school, we had clinical little classes. We had different little short spurts where we'd go do our little small interns. And one of those small interns was at a diabetes clinic in Monroe. So I did that on one of my tracks, and at that point before pharmacy school, living at home, I was a very active person, always tennis, everything I could think of, high level, as best I could, not competing, but I would just go all out, burn as much calories as I could, just because I wanted to do the exercise, just because I wanted to put myself in stressful situations. So before pharmacy school, was a fairly fit person up until that point. Go back further, I had different health issues. But then when I got into pharmacy school, we become more sedentary. You're not moving as much. You're just studying all the time. You're going party all the time. Well, not all the time, but when you have a break once a month. So you got a lot of social drinking and, a lot of unhealthy practices that we unfortunately were in. And the high stress, it's just how people start, relieving
Look for
stress.
different outlets.
Unfortunately. So I got to a point where I was about 215 pounds or so, just didn't feel right. Something didn't sit well with me. So when I was in that diabetes clinic for that 6-week track or whatever it was, I started seeing, not again, but maybe the first time, but I started seeing the people coming in, not all of them overweight, but just on medications, but still coming every week. Same thing, nothing changed. Okay, you talk to them. Okay, what about your medic? Oh, I took it every day. Okay, what'd you eat? This junk food, that junk food. Okay, well then can you make a small change here and there? And they weren't willing to. So at that point, I realized I'm doing the same thing. I might not be on medications, but I'm eating, gorging myself, making all these rice and gravies and just all this food, fast food, everything we could, go out to restaurants, enjoying friends, all these things.
You were on that path, and you saw where it was leading.
Exactly. So like I said, I was about 215 pounds, and for me, I am tall, but 215 pounds does not, my body frame it doesn't work well with that weight. Like right now, I'm probably at my ideal body weight, and I'm like 180.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I was roughly like 40 to 45 pounds overweight by the scientific standards and by how I feel as well, So something changed in me where I took a track where I just started eating the best I could think of at that time. And then in that journey, I started, again, God had to put that in my mind, like, look, John, you can grow this stuff and do it better. You can do all that. You can have a farm. You can have all this. And what's crazy is I'm probably the first generation. I mean, if you go back 5 or 6 generations, it'd be different. But I'm the first generation person to actually have chickens and have pigs and have donkeys and all that stuff. Like this is crazy. You know, there's
not
nobody,
part of your normal family life that
way.
you grew up in.
No way. We might have had one tomato plant as a kid. My mom might have had a tomato plant. I don't know, Mom. Sorry if you did or not. I don't remember. But there definitely wasn't a garden.
Right.
There was like flower bed, you know. So the craziest thing in the world, I still think I'm crazy, but
of course.
They think I'm crazy for a different reason now than when I first started this. When I first started this, they were like, why would you want to do that? You know, now they think I'm crazy because I have the right ideal in some fashion or another. Mm-hmm. So working in the pharmacy showed me daily people coming in just every day. You know, they come once a month or they come every day for their medications, same diabetes, same blood pressure medication, but they can't figure out why they're not getting any better. You know, like I tell them, like, look, well, do you try these things? Do you try to do this? And they say, well, I can't afford that. Or I'm like, either God hasn't given me the correct way to help you change that, or I need to find a way to give it to you. You know, so if I can give you the medication, then why can't I give you the food? Mm-hmm. So that mindset has been the craziest thing that I've ever experienced, because going from dispensing medication to growing food, there's nothing there that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like if you really look at like dietitians and stuff, and again, I'm not trying to put a general basis, but as a whole, the scientific, you know, government, the USDA or whatever those different organizations are, you look at the food tables, there's nothing about that makes sense. There's really nothing about that other than the greed of the manufacturers of food. Because even our beef system, all that is nothing. There's nothing normal about the way that we get our food.
What I found amazing was, because homesteading is picking up some steam in the mainstream, and I've heard other podcasts with folks talking about the way food is grown, home growing, et cetera. What I found amazing, I did not know this, but not surprised at the same time, is that medical doctors might get one class of nutrition, maybe, in all of their years of schooling, which, kind of knowing what we know now, is pretty wild. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
And the problem is, I mean, again, I don't know their curriculum, but I'm pretty sure this is mostly factual. The problem with that, even that one class, is it's eat grain, like the food table. Right. You know what I mean? It's not putting emphasis on the source of the food, because sure, you can go out, you can have a like that's the thing now, is a carnivore diet. You can have a carnivore diet, but what meats are you choosing? Are you choosing highly processed sausages that were raised in a grain fed, you know, which again, more to talk about there too, but I think you get the point. Like the point is, just because you're choosing a diet or you're choosing a better lifestyle doesn't mean you're still making the right decision. And I think that's the problem in even their education, is that they're taught, okay, so you need these grains, you need these different carbs, different balances of proteins and all that, but it doesn't work for everybody. But our system is so broken that you can't, it's just not possible. You know, It's not possible to go to the grocery store and live a healthy life unless you are rich. I definitely firmly agree with that. And that's where I'm trying to get to the point.
So what's your grand vision? Is to grow enough food to be able to dispense, as you say?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I've already started. So Adult Teen Challenge here, especially the chapter in Lafayette, in Arnoldville. I work with Scotty a little bit. I first started with eggs, and then they got their own chickens. So pigs is what pork is what I've been trying to donate to them the most frequent. But yeah. So my grand vision or dream is that God will allow me the lifestyle to have a farm that provides for my family, but donates and gives people nutrient-dense food, not just food, because you have all these food banks, right? And it's packed. Most of the time it's packaged.
We've packed a number of them. At the company I work at, we do it every year in New Orleans, and the food quality is
unfortunate,
sad.
Yeah, and I think that's What it comes to, I don't know, but at least I do something. But like I passed up a second harvest food truck this morning, and it crossed my mind. I'm like, what's in that truck? You know, it was refrigerated, but what refrigerated items are in that truck? Yeah. So the key for me is to grow nutrient dense food the way that God intended the food to be grown. You know, people say, well, we have to feed the billions of people. And I think that's completely incorrect. Like if you follow Joel Salatin or some of those newer thought processes, if we stick to growing food for our communities, our population of like 50 to 100 people, and we have these smaller, I think he calls it like abattoirs of people growing food, you don't have to feed people globally. You don't have to bring guac or avocados from Mexico. You don't need to do those things because we'll have what we need locally. And more importantly, we'll have it in the correct season when God wants that food to be eaten. I firmly believe, like if you pay attention, like I talked to Ashley about this a couple times. It's kind of a weird thought, but like when the citrus normally ripen, it's roughly around like November after the first good freeze, because that makes it sweeter. It lets the juices come out a little more. The moisture content's different. Don't you think it's weird that citrus is ripe in a time period when we're more inside, our immune systems are lower? Doesn't that seem weird that particular, like that's just one example, that food that we use for vitamin C is high in vitamin C is more prevalent and more ripe, just that one particular one, in a time when we need it the most.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, so the whole track for me is trying to grow food differently, but be able to give it people that need it and the time they need it and the quality that they need it. You know, so maybe these medications won't be needed. Maybe big pharma won't be, or I don't know if we can say that. Take that out, blooper. Yeah, maybe like we don't have to rely on thousands of miles or to grow lettuce in California that goes all the way to New York that comes back to Louisiana. Like, why can't we just get lettuce that's grown in Texas?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why can't we get spinach that's grown in North Arkansas? Or I don't, I'm just throwing out random things, you know, but all like, and that's
relook at everything in a different lens.
Yeah. And and that's the different lens. The thing for me is realizing that there are limitations of what we can grow in our climate, but what we can, the stuff that we can, the vegetables, the fruits, the proteins that we can grow are more than enough. You know what I mean? Like if you want to supplement with apples, because we can't, it's hard to grow apples here. Sure, I'm not saying don't get apples from Washington,
right?
You know, but I'm just trying to say that if the bulk of your diet is coming from somewhere other than your geographic region, something's not right, you know. And this is something else that's been on my mind is a Bible study, or just in the YouVersion app is a Bible study to help people understand, like, look, this is God's biblical promises.
Yeah.
And in the Garden of Eden, what's in here, don't take the tree, you know, don't take from that tree that the snake told you to. If you do everything that he tells you, then it's probably going to work out for you, you know?
Yeah.
So the same can be said. Like if I can go raise pigs, if I can raise chickens right there in my house, that's my Garden of Eden. You know, that's mine. That's what God gave me, you know?
Is Ashley as passionate about it as you are?
Man, so, and I know we had alluded to that too. So timeline-wise, I think it's been about 2 years that again, I guess God put it on my heart to start a small group at Crossroads Church. And that small group was a homesteading group. I called it Homesteading for Jesus. And it just came upon me one day, like, because we always have these discussions, Ashley and I, like, how do we connect with people in the community who are doing what we're doing, but also demand what we're doing? Because I'm not trying to, like, sell things. Like, I would like to sell a few things to supplement because it's expensive to grow food.
Right.
But I'm not trying to make a business out of the growing food part. But we still would like to connect with people who want what we're doing, who are interested in what we're doing. So I started the group, and Ashley supported it, obviously, because she had to support me. Forced. I did force her.
Oh,
I did force her almost. I said, Ashley, I'm starting a group. I need you, and she had no choice. But it's okay. I think that's part of marriage.
Thank you, Ashley.
But all joking aside, in that small group, something changed like this with her mindset on growing the food. Her family, her grandparents are completely opposite than my family.
Okay.
Like her grandparents had grew food. Like they
Oh, wow.
they have, her Malweezy and Paul. They probably had, I think, 7 kids. I can't remember exactly. They're probably going to kick me for this, but they had to grow the food because, again, they didn't have the money, but they also had to feed a lot of people,
a lot of mouths.
So they would do different things to raise animals for themselves and kill it themselves. So even in that, she would help. I think she's told me before she's helped butcher chickens as a kid, but she still wasn't really interested in growing her own food. She showed sheep for 4-H and all that. And I think she beat all the boys, but she never really had that inclination to grow food for herself. So, which again, a whole other thing is like, why did God bring us together?
Yeah.
Somebody who wasn't interested in that, her to not being interested, to me being interested in it, both in the medical field, realizing these problems with the medical field. So in the Homesteading for Jesus small group that I started with Ashley, we started, I should say that correctly. I saw a big change in her. Like, I mean, COVID, this was after COVID, but COVID really made a change for everybody, I think. I don't know, some people reverted back because of lifestyle.
Convenience.
But, yeah. But for her, she knew what I was doing. She accepted everything I was doing, wanted to help, but she didn't help in the capacity that she helps now. And it wasn't until that small group and maybe her seeing the people who were joining the group, seeing their needs and seeing how she could help them. But something has changed drastically with her. Like now she almost does it. Like the garden, I call her my garden manager, because I really can't keep up with the garden. But for some reason, she enjoys that thing. Like she starts seedlings, like she seeds. She got a couple hundred seeds she started. They're all sprouting and all that right now. I made another garden for her to do her flowers because she likes that. That's pretty cool. It looks good the way they do it nowadays. But yeah, something big has changed in her as far as growing food, and maybe God has put on her heart to like, look, John's vision is correct. Like I think he's going on the right track, but he needs your help, Ashley. Mm-hmm. I think maybe I'm hoping that's why she's changed. Just leave it up to him as best we can do in the prayers and stuff. So
yeah, amen. And that's I love that, y'all coming together now, working on the same vision, working towards that vision. Yep. And I'm assuming that's also the drive with the businesses on the side to help provide so that you can really focus on the passion of growing food together with the family and for the community in that regard. Yeah.
And it's not easy because, man, I mean, the challenges with business, with real estate investing, I mean, I'm coming in at a time that's probably the hardest time in the past 10, 20 years, other than the financial collapse in 2008, 2009. But it's not easy right now to make money the way I'm trying to make money. You know, I mean, we have all our debts paid off. Like we've done crazy for the way, like we lived pretty frugally to get to this point. We paid off quite a bit of student debt. I mean, so we've been blessed drastically to get to the point, and it's often like, I was talking to the CPA yesterday, Trey, and it's like, man, taxes are just eating me alive. Like, dude, I just need to find some deductions. Like, really just need more income. But I'm like, okay, but I think I have enough income, but does it give me enough to grow the food? That's the part, that's the struggle is like, I probably could do it. Like even part-time, I still make enough money, but I don't think I'll be fulfilled. I don't feel like I'm making enough impact to grow as much food as I'm hoping to grow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's part of the balance, right?
It is.
I love it, man. I love seeing you looking back and seeing how God's kind of woven this thread of different pieces, in your own personal life with Ashley and, some of the challenges that you walked through, that she walked through, and seeing God move on your heart and together now pursuing a singular vision. Not that everything is always easy or challenge-free, but through these moments, like you said, when y'all were at a tipping point and y'all grew together through that, and individually, like the real estate investing, I know there's moments, challenges that you've had to face that you just have to grow into the occasion, leaning on God and, hey, need help. I know we're in a season like that with our real estate as well, because it is a challenging time for sure. So I'd love, man, if you have anything or nothing else to say around those pieces, to get to our rapid fire questions to round this thing out.
Oh man, it's up to you. I can talk all day. I mean, like I said, I think like to summarize everything that I've said is like, most people nowadays, I find I connect with different people who are investing in different businesses, and they're just doing it just just because they feel like they have to grind, just because they have to. But I think that's something that's very important is what's the vision or why are you grinding, and having that goal of getting the farm to a different level than where it's at now, other than just providing for ourselves. I think that's the hardest part, and having and making sure that you're going towards that vision, not just an endless loop of trying to make more money because you need more money, but that it's not going to get the vision.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, because I found even in my own life, looking back at where we are today, as an example, I mentioned to you, content creation was something God put on my heart, 14 years ago, and I hate to say that publicly, but everyone's going to know now, but I put off on that because it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't something I enjoyed doing. I still don't really like social media. But go back to the scripture of, in my weakness, God's strength is made perfect. And so understanding and seeking first, all right, God, what is that vision? Seeking first his kingdom. What have you created me to do? The purpose. We hear that a lot, even in leadership talks and all of these, even secular stuff of, hey, what's your purpose? What's your why? What's the vision that you have? And I think that is appropriate, because to have that vision, to make it plain, to write it down, because without vision, people perish. And so, and I see when we say perish, I think of, just going in a circle, different season of life, but around the same mountain in 5 different ways. And so, I think that's great. I think I'm thankful that y'all have that vision that's bringing y'all together now, and I'm excited to see what comes of it. I know Bethany, she went to the small group and she loved it. So, if God puts that on your heart to do again, for sure.
Yeah, we took a break. I mean, we're building a house now, and we're having another baby.
Congratulations.
End of June. Yeah, so we're going to have we're going to complete the Gospels, so it'll be Luke. So my brother, Mark, Matthew, I'm John, and now we'll have Luke.
That's awesome.
And my mom she tells us stories how she wanted to name me Luke. So it worked out pretty well.
Awesome.
But we're taking a break for at least for now for this year. But I definitely intend on bringing it back. I mean,
I love that.
It's a struggle to do groups because everybody's so busy. Everybody's pulling different directions. So you try to find what works for everybody, and you get a lot of demand, but not a whole lot of interaction sometimes. So it's definitely getting over that mindset. Like, look, one person is all you need. Like if you influence one person, that's more than enough. Like, in fact,
made a huge difference with that one.
Like, I mean, it's true. It came full circle for me a few weeks ago, because Scotty Amon with Dalton Teen Challenge, he texted me a couple weeks ago, which he came to like our first meeting, but his lifestyle just wasn't possible for him to come back. He just could not come back. But probably close to a year or maybe more since that first meeting that he attended, he texted me like, "Hey, this is my garden." Like,
nice.
Dude, you're getting it, man. You're doing what you did. And I gave him a few little pointers like, look, do this. Doesn't take much more time, but you'll exponentially grow the amount of food without that much more work. There's small little things. So yeah, it is full circle. Like, bring the 99. Why search for the 99 when there's just one little lamb that's awesome, that can use your help. So that kind of helped a lot.
That's cool.
It kind of gives me hope that maybe we'll be back at it and have no issue if it's just one person who shows
making
up,
an impact either way.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So I'll jump into the ABCs of the Elevation Room. The first one: what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, man. So we didn't get to really discuss much of it, but I definitely was a shy, stick to myself, afraid to really get out there. And again, maybe that's just part of the journey. Maybe I was supposed to be shy. Maybe I was supposed to not interact with people. Maybe I wasn't supposed to give into the temptations of the world at that time. I wasn't ready for it. I don't know what God exactly, but the biggest thing is, like I said, we already talked about the vision, obviously, and knowing your why, that everybody tries to talk about that. But I think the why has to be bigger than you. And it doesn't just I think the why doesn't just include you going to show up on a Saturday to lend your time. I think the why has to be more than just donating your money. Has to be more than just tithing. It has to be tithing with more than just your treasure. It has to be has to be more than your time. It has to be your talent as well. And I think that's how the farm coincides with me, my time, talent, and treasure. So to put the shy adolescent and the farm together, advice wise for myself is like, you were on the track you're supposed to be on, even though it didn't seem right or didn't feel right, or you had this pushback in your heart. It's gonna come together. That just believe that no matter what you do, no matter how the struggles you feel or how depressed you might feel in certain stages of life, or it's gonna work its way out. And I definitely wish I would have. Definitely wish I had stronger faith as a kid, but again, my mom did the best she could, and you need both sides to have that foundation. I just didn't get that foundation from the father side that I probably needed.
Yeah.
Not to put the blame on anybody, but that may have helped me.
Yeah.
That may have helped me in the early stages with my faith. But I made it where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, amen. I love Bible verse says the footsteps of the righteous are ordered by God. It's one of my favorites. So I hear you.
I hope I answered your question.
Oh, yeah. Hey, B, for books, what books have made the greatest impact? And I know you said you're not much of a book reader, so, whether it's a podcast or anything else.
Man.
I hear you.
I tried. Like even the library, again, I'm frugal. So the library, I pay my taxes, I guess. But the library, you can get pretty much most books you want for free.
Yeah.
So I've tried the book route. I tried audio book route, and I can't stick with it. So podcast has been my biggest thing. And, lately again, this probably will be a very select few of your audience, but one of the podcasts lately that I really like is called the Pastured Pig podcast, because I think pigs are by far the best animal interaction wise. The amount of meat you can get from them, I think that's one of the best animals to raise on a homestead. So the Pastured Pig podcast is really like where I'm getting a lot of keeping my farm vision centered.
Okay,
that's really helping a lot with my education, especially. Because otherwise I'm like, I have to do things out in the real world to understand them, because I've watched enough videos, I've watched enough stuff. But as far as business wise podcasts or whatever, education wise is his name is Chris Kerner. I think it's like the Kerner's Kerner office or something like that.
Okay.
But he just spitfires random businesses every day. And it's the same thing that goes on in my head every day. So he's like affirming, he's helping me affirm, like, I was onto something here because somebody actually is doing it. No, I probably won't do it, but it helps me understand when I do have the businesses going, the little minute details that I might be missing that I need to do a better job on. So that podcast is probably one of the better ones right now.
Very cool.
So one thing I wanted to ask you too is, I know we hadn't talked about this much, but off camera, but I'm trying to find more biblical type podcasts that aren't as much about like we do enough Bible study. I'm trying to find more mindset centered, God centered podcasts. That's something I've been really trying to do. So I don't know if your audience has it, or if you have some, that send some recommendations.
Yeah.
For sure.
Hey, put some comments in below YouTube, wherever you're listening, and we'll get those to you for sure. And off camera, I can give you a few ideas. Some of the biblical ones I have around marriage and stuff that that are really good. So I'm happy to share those with you. To see, the last one is cherished family traditions that you have or hoping to develop.
Yeah. So again, not having any money or anything, we really didn't take vacations, or we really just our family was kind of dysfunctional, and if you want to call it that, as a broad view. And again, I hate to say that because I don't want to make anybody feel like they weren't adequate, because my parents did the best they could, and my mom by far the best did amazing. But yeah, so we really didn't have any traditions, that I can remember or recall. But so the biggest thing for me is making those traditions and starting that with my current, and only family, immediate and only family. So like one of the biggest things for me is hiking. And I know some people say, why do you want to accomplish, or why do you want to conquer things? But God has given me the ability to, if you want to call it, conquer mountains. And hey, I don't know, maybe that's again, that goes into farming, because that's a mountain to accomplish what I'm trying to do. And especially when I have nobody's done it to teach me. I'm learning myself. So doing hard things, like hiking to top of the highest mountains is one of the traditions that I'm trying to, get my family to start doing. Obviously my kid and other child are very young. So it'll roughly be another 4 to 5 years before Stella could really come along on a journey with me. We can start somewhere.
That's right.
Small
Those
small
state
things.
parks or something,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And that's another thing too, is crazy part is, as far as Ashley and I coming together, is the craziest thing. You would never think that Ashley or any woman, most women would want to do with what I'm trying to do with mountains. And we went to Colorado in 2023 maybe, and we hiked Mount Elbert, and Ashley hiked it with me, and she went on a little bit of a training plan, the best I could tell her ahead of time, and she did really well. Like,
that's awesome.
Like, it's struggle. You're gonna have some illness, you're gonna have some altitude sicknesses, you're gonna have different little hiccups along the way, but man, she got it. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And that's the crazy thing is, hiking that mountain, in the process, I'm going at a pace, like I'm going slow. And Ashley knows this. Like she was holding me back. You know what I mean? But that's the part of the journey, is like she wouldn't hold me back. We were right where we needed to be. And that's like sticking with her. Like, man, you got this. You got this. Like it's a struggle, and you're not going at the pace that I think we could go, but we're going exactly where we needed to. And she accomplished it. That's the crazy part.
That is awesome.
Mount Elbert, I think it's like number 2 or number 3 highest in the lower 48, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I've got Mount Whitney, which is the highest in the lower 48. I've got Mount Elbert. I've got something called Half Dome, which is a feat in itself, because I didn't realize how psychotic it was until I got there. You watch videos and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not, height's not that bad. You get there, it's like, oh. So
not what I was expecting.
I got a kid and a wife. And my wife agreed that I could go on this trip, but I don't think she knows this. So going up those on the cables, man, if you watch videos and stuff, you like I said, watching the videos, you don't get the sense of it until you are there in the surroundings. So my ultimate goal is to get to Mount Kilimanjaro to hike that. That'd be awesome if I could do it with Stella and Ashley, and my Luke here is coming soon. That only problem is that'd probably be like 10 years maybe at the earliest, and that puts me in my late 40s.
Hey, reason to stay healthy.
I could probably do it, but
you're growing your own food, so
I'm struggling. It's gonna be tough. So hiking
something to work towards.
Hiking, but not just I like to conquer things. That's something that I'm trying to instill in them, and I think that tradition will lend itself to the lifestyle that I'm trying to live, and trying to show them that can be lit. Not just doing things differently. Entrepreneurship or business or whatever they choose, but it's not going to be easy. And if you can conquer a mountain, then you can conquer a day-to-day in a pharmacy or something, or a pharmacy school. So
that's awesome, man. I love it. Well, I appreciate you sitting here with me, chit-chatting. I've enjoyed our conversation. I'm sure our listeners will as well. So if they want to reach out to you and connect with you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm just John Romero on Facebook. I hadn't really, again, the social media thing is something that I feel like I need to do better. And I feel like that's something that almost has to be done nowadays. But I'm just on Facebook, or phone number. If anybody wants that, they can comment, or I can send it to them, email it to them. I will have a Facebook page here pretty soon for Raging Stripes and Washing, that business that I'm starting. I haven't done it yet, but hopefully soon I'll get that done. That'll be a good way to connect with me. If you got any businesses that need their parking lots painted, that would be amazing.
Awesome.
That's something that I'm really trying to do, a lot of cold calls and stuff lately, which is a weird thing. But
amen to that. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining the Elevation Room. Until next time.